you know, without the politics, of course. And they're all helping each other.
Jock Stein's brand of athletic socialism got every fair-minded observer's vote for the 9 consecutive seasons that Celtic took the Scottish League Championship. The individual flair of his players was harnessed to his own deep understanding of the practicalities of football. When success in Scotland took Celtic into Europe, the enthusiasm of the players went supported by their manager's preparations.
I once watched a match with him in Madrid before Celtic played Atletico Madrid. And it was interesting the way he worked out how teams were going to play. They'd have a blank sheet of paper and he would just go across it where the ball was for 90 minutes. So at the end of 90 minutes you had this great scrawl, but what you could see out of it was the particular areas in the pitch where the team played and where the ball went and, roughly speaking, who was going to get the ball most. And that was, of course, vital, because if you know, players don't play thinking about it, they play instinctively. So you knew that instinctively, if they were under any sort of pressure, they'd play the ball here or they'd play the ball there, and he could just put people to stop them doing that.
It was proving harder to stop Celtic. When they dismantled Dukla Prague in the semi-final of the European Cup in 1967, they were on their way to Lisbon. It began to look as if they might be the first British club team to win the competition. Perhaps that wasn't a possibility too widely welcomed south of the border.
I was the only manager of an English club that was there. None of them took the trouble to go there. I mean, they hadn't seen the Celtic, and I had, of course.
Kimmel, he scored a great goal! He's done it! Kimmel. Werner. It's goal! Celtic has scored!
But I was in the dressing room after the game, because I remember Jock, I think he'd just come out of the bath, he was sweating as much as the players. And with Hugh McIlvenney, and I said, Jock, you're immortal now.
The real beauty of Jock's career was that he could be a manager of the highest class and of the highest achievement without leaving Scotland, because he made Celtic a world power in football. And that is quite monumental.
Jock Stein himself, the man who led this great team to victory in the European Cup.
It didn't take him long to come down to earth, although the European Cup was safely in Celtic's hands.
And I think that in that box, yes, in that box is the European Cup. We're not going to get a glimpse of it, but we're assured that it's...
His players had become national celebrities, but Jock Stein was determined not to let the adulation go to their heads. He let them enjoy the moment while it lasted, but each of the temporary heroes knew that the manager was always ready to give them a reception that was less than civic.
The first person in was the club doctor. And John Fitzsimmons came in and Jock said to him, what do you want? And John was very taken aback and looked at me for support, and he wasn't getting any at that particular point, and said, well, I'm interested to see if there are any injuries. And Jock said, injuries? The only injury in here is heart trouble, and I'll soon cure that. So you get out of here. So John went away very offended, and the players started in. And Jock got the door shut and started on goalkeeper, right back, like right through the team, you know, giving everybody a piece of his mind. And I'm sitting in the corner, not paying any attention to any of that, got nothing to do with me at all. I was just sitting on the bench when he stopped, and I was suddenly conscious. I don't know if you've ever been in that position. You're staring at the floor, but out of the corner of your eye, you can see that somebody's feet are pointed in your direction. And there's only a certain amount of time that you can't look at the person. Eventually, you know, you do look up. And when I looked up at Jock, and he said, as for you, what a player you must be if you kind of get your place in this squad, he said.
He seems to do the right things at the right time. And whilst he can tear a strip of you and all, and people think he's maybe lost his head, within that, he hasn't. He knows what he's saying. Yeah.
The success continued. In 1970, Celtic comprehensively defeated the pride of English football, Leeds United, in the semi-final of the European Cup. But they were to lose the final. There would never again be quite as much cause for celebration at Celtic Park under Jock Stein.
As mentioned one time, he was at a match at Liverpool, and on the way we'd arranged to meet. And I suggested at the time he should probably, we'd love him to come to Old Trafford. And he said he'd think about it, and eventually, I think he was full of it at the time, and then all of a sudden he decided probably he would be better staying in Scotland.
It was while returning to Scotland from holiday that his car was involved in a head-on collision. He recovered, but he had travelled as far as he could with Celtic, and he moved on, first to be briefly manager with Leeds, and then to take over the Scottish team. In the 1982 World Cup in Spain, the healthy pragmatism he had instilled in the Scottish side was eventually overwhelmed by the brilliance of Brazil. He stayed on as team manager, controlling Scotland's attempts to qualify for the 1986 World Cup. To the end of his career, he remained deeply concerned about football, always worth listening to when he spoke about it. The pressures and the fame he had lived with for years never gave him a false perspective on himself or on the sport. His vision of the game was total. He understood it from the training pitch to the terracings. While preparing Scotland for their crucial qualifying match against Wales, he saw his immediate problems in the wider context of what was happening to football.
The biggest thing it wouldn't work for me would be if it was a game that brought a bit of bad behaviour into the crowd and brought the game again under the microscope of people who are trying to stop the game. Because we've got prime ministers and sports ministers and other kind of ministers who are all trying to tell us how we should administer the game. They know nothing at all about the game of football, and maybe they don't know so much about the politics as well, but they're trying to run football, and most of them don't go to a football match. If they had their way, they would kill the game at football. And it's only good games at football that we might have tonight that will keep the game alive. Another bad game, another bad scene, another bad time that would give the press good coverage and would give people who want to hit the game a bit would be bad for the game of football, and that's not good.
He had also tried to persuade the Scottish fans that although the game belonged to them, they must give the running of it into the hands of those who realistically understood the problems.
There's an awful lot of people coming to see us and paying an awful lot of money and travelling a long distance. Let's try and give them a result, and that's important.
Jock Stein got the result, but died as it was achieved.
One thing you've got to accept, it was totally committed to football. I mean, he was determined to be a success. I think he was destined to be a success, to be quite frank with you. But football, he lived and breathed football. I often think that he could have had another form of relaxation. Didn't drink, didn't smoke. We tried to get him to drink at different times, but he always resisted that temptation. I honestly feel that it would have provided just a wee bit of a relaxation for him, because he was so intense about football and he was so wrapped up in it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think his whole dedication to the game probably denied him the right of a bit of retirement and a little peace and quiet that I think he was entitled to. He was entitled to enjoy success an awful lot more than he did.
People knew that he was also a vulnerable man, you know, often a tormented man, Jock, and, you know, despite having a marvellous family and having great love around him, he was a man who was alert to the anguish of life. I don't think it was an innocence in terms of being short of street wisdom. He certainly wasn't short of that, but it was a willingness to leave himself in vulnerable places, or to leave himself in places where he was vulnerable. You know, in other words, he didn't believe in insulating himself against what happens out there. And that's why he knew what nearly everybody was up to. You know, as V. Jimmy Johnson said to me once, he said, he's even got spies in the noggin. I thought he meant inside his head. I thought it was a sort of Manchurian Candidate routine. But what he meant was a pub called the Noggin. And Jock said, I don't have spies in the noggin, but I've got a guy across the road who sees the wee man going in sometimes. He said, and then I'll make a phone call. He said, is Jimmy Johnson there? And he said, and the barman will say, yes, Jimmy! Jimmy will come and say, hello. He said, aye, hello. If you don't get your ass out of there. So I think his understanding of wee Jimmy was considerable. Jock once said to me, he said, when I've finished with this game, he said, I think people may be inclined to say that the most remarkable thing I did was to win 9 championships in a row, or to have the first British club team to win the